Hey guys, Mike here. I got this 4.5 volt battery powered soldering iron from HobbyKing. It runs off of 3 AA batteries. Let's take a look at how it works and then let's see if we can mod it to work off of USB or a 1-cell LiPo for power.
So let's open it up. I've actually already cut the sides on this thing. So we got the soldering iron here. It's got a switch here on the top, on-off switch. So forward and backwards. A little LED on the front. Comes with some solder here and a cap here. This cap goes on the front here, and this holds the switch in an off position so you don't accidentally turn it on. I bought this so that I could put it in my toolbox when I go flying my RC planes in case I have to do any emergency soldering. Let's go ahead and put the batteries in this thing. I'm finding that the battery cover is kind of hard to open. I have to use a screwdriver. Maybe I can fix that. Okay, let's put the batteries in here. There's a sticker on the back that tells you the orientation. Put the lid on here. So now if you just push the switch forward, the soldering iron isn't on yet. It's not even hot. But if you push this yellow button here, you see the LED light, and let's see, it's starting to get hot. Okay, let's test this thing out. I let it cool down here. Let's make sure it's still cool. Okay, feels pretty cool. Now it says that it heats up in less than 15 seconds and it cools down in less than 30. And it can operate for approximately 1 hour on new batteries. So that's pretty good. So I've got a little sponge here so I can keep my tip clean. And I'm just going to use some of my own solder here. This is 6040 rosin core. Just your really good solder for. So let's try it out here. See how long it takes. Okay, it's melting it. I'd say that was under 15 seconds. It's great. So, definitely getting some solder out. You can see it there on my dirty sponge. Alright, I like that. Okay, so it's been about 30 seconds. Let's feel the tip. It's still warm, but definitely cool enough to the touch. It's got a nice fine tip too. It's got a threaded end right here. It looks like the tip could be removed. That's good. So let's go ahead and see if we can mod this thing so we can use USB power instead. So the first thing we're going to do is turn it off, and let's remove the battery cover here. Get the batteries out. Okay, so if you look at this, it looks like there's 4 different screws that we're going to have to remove. There's one here, and then there's one behind this sticker here, and one back here. So let's go ahead and pull that sticker back a little bit so we can see that screw. Maybe I'll just pull this off. Set that aside. Take off these screws here. I'm going to take this off carefully. You can see the inside of it there. Give it a close up. So this right here, where the spring is the negative contact point, and up here, this is the positive contact point on this middle part. So we're going to need to solder our connectors to these 2 pieces. We're going to run our positive wire up right along the battery cavity here, right in that corner, and we're going to solder it right up here to this connector, and then we're going to take the negative and run it down in this side, in this cavity, all the way to the spring and solder it to the spring. And then that way we could still use the batteries if we wanted to. So what you want to do is you want to remove this metal clip here. Make sure you note its location before you take it out so you can put it back in. I decided to cut some lead wires about 10 inches long and install those inside. And then I'm going to just hook up my 2 USB wires outside of the unit. So you want to measure about 5.5 inches from the tip of the wire, and you're going to tie a knot there. This knot will hold the wire in place, keep it from pulling back out. Okay, we got our knot made here, and you want to go ahead and you want to look and see where you're going to place your wires. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole right here at the base of this part here where this molding comes in the middle. We're going to drill a hole, and that's where the wires are going to exit, and then we're going to slide the wires through that, and the knot part is going to stay up inside. Okay, the size hole that I'm using is about 3/32, but just whatever you use is fine. Just make sure it's big enough for the wires to go through, but not too big that the knot goes through. Okay, slide my wires through here, and my knot works pretty good there. Alright. Positive wire will go on the top, negative wire will go on the bottom. Okay, so now we just have to connect the wires here to the metal contacts. I'm going to set this metal piece in here, and just to get an idea of where I need to cut my wire. Cut that wire. Okay, and strip it back here, about just the right length. Twist these strands a little bit. Okay, I'm going to remove this metal piece here because I don't want to solder this inside the plastic because it'll probably melt. I'm going to attach it to my helping hand here so I can get a good grip on it. And I know where I want to attach my wire. I want to attach it to the bottom side of this thing here. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to tin the wire here. You always want to tin your connections before you make them. Tin this bottom of this connector here. Might have to get it pretty hot because metal distributes heat pretty well. Make sure you get both surfaces hot before you make the connection. You get a much better connection here. One thing that you can do to make sure you have a good connection is just drill a little hole in your metal there and then put the wire through it and then solder to that. Tug on it, make sure you got a good connection there. Let it cool down a little bit before you put it back in there. Make sure you have enough play for everything. Next we need to connect our negative wire to the spring. You want to put it in this cavity right here, and you just want to strip about the last ½ inch of wire. If you're using small wire, it's a good idea to get some of these mini strippers, wire strippers. Okay, so we want to take this negative wire here, twist the strands, and we're going to attach it to the spring part here on the bottom channel, and I'm just going to put it through the end of the spring and twist it. Okay, let's try the spring, make sure the spring is still moving, and yep, the spring still moves. And let's put a little solder on it. Okay, heat that up. This one I'm not going to pre-solder because I'm just putting it all together as one piece. Okay, let's give it a little tug here, see how that is. So when the batteries are in here, the wire will get pulled taut, but the wires will stay in the middle cavity here. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the switch back on here. And let's put the cover back on. Okay, let's just make sure that this cover still closes. It's hitting just a little bit, so I am going to just trim that out a little bit. I can see where it's hitting right on this edge here. Okay, so if you look at the side of this, you can see that I trimmed this out with a hobby knife, this edge right here, so that it doesn't hit the knot. And if we slide it in, it slides in nice and comes out a lot easier than it used to. Okay, so we're going to strip our wires here so that we can hook up the USB power to it. So I'll strip about ½ inch or so off each end. Okay, on my USB cable here, I've stripped back the outer insulation here. You can see I pulled it back, and then I have the wires exposed here. These are the two power wires. I have a red and black. Typically the red is your positive and black is your negative, but you want to plug this into your computer and just test it with a voltmeter. Okay, I plugged it in my computer. Now we're going to do the test with a voltmeter. Testing. And you can see my voltmeter reads 4.9 volts. So typically USB is around 5 volts. So we're good to go. You also want to make sure you have the polarity correct. If you have a negative reading on your multimeter, you want to try reversing the wires. So you want to make sure you know which side is positive and which side is negative. Take your USB cable, take your two wires that should have been stripped already, and we're going to have to attach these two to these two. Negative to negative and positive to positive. I'm going to cut some heat shrink to put over mine. Just about 3/4 of an inch or so. Slide the heat shrink on. I like to kind of fold the wires into each other in the middle so they're both bent, and then just twist the wires around. Before we solder this thing. Not really any need to pre-tin these wires because they're going to be twisted around like that. In fact, you probably don't want to pre-tin them. Hold your heat underneath the wires. Make sure the wires get nice and hot before you apply your solder. Let them cool a little bit, give them a little snug, make sure give them a little snug there, make sure they're in there tight. And I'm just going to slide the heat shrink over it, but I'm not going to heat it yet. I like to just test it out first before I heat my heat shrink. Okay, let's go test it out. Okay, here we go. Let's plug it into my computer here. Into the USB port. See if I can do this. Got the tripod, so it's plugged in. And this camera and the tripod. Okay, so we don't have the batteries in here right now. No batteries. See how this thing does. Okay, it's melting the solder. Look at that. Alright. Okay, cool. Now I got USB power. The other thing that I did was I took my iron and I put a little connector on the end of it. This is a JST connector. And I have a 1-cell LiPo battery, which is 4.2 volts when it's fully charged. And I hooked that up to it. So it's not quite the 4.5 volts, but as you can see, it seems like it's heating up okay. Try a little bit of melting of soldering iron of the solder. And you can see it melts just fine. So you got that as another power option. 1-cell LiPo battery, which is 4.2 volts. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe.